Summer is almost here, and if you're anything like me, you are both looking forward to it and dreading it. Maybe your kids are a variety of ages, and you just feel like you haven't nailed it when it comes to creating family traditions without those complaints and those eye rolls. If this is you, this episode will be transformational. Let's be honest, we all need the help, and we need it regularly. So let's jump into those tips. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self, as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family, with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important, unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to episode number 114, Summer Bonding, Creating Family Traditions Without the Eye Rolls. Now, I know all the schools are getting out at different times, but summer is fast approaching, and it is just maybe days away, maybe weeks away, but it is at the door. So, are you like me? Are you dreading it, but also so excited for it, and you think, man, I just haven't nailed this any year so far, even though maybe I've been a parent for years? Well, you are not alone. I feel this way every single year, every single holiday, to be honest. So we just keep trying. And that's what we're here to talk about today. How can we get a little bit better? We may not be perfect by the end of the summer, but at least we'll be better. We'll have created more of those experiences with more success. I want to start with a little story. We had a break not too long ago, a school break, and anytime there is a weekend or a school break or a holiday, any of those things, we try to sit down with our family and talk about plans, what their preferences are, just get that buy-in. Some of those tips that I'll talk about in a minute. Well, we were doing this for this upcoming thing, and we were just in that rut again with people just complaining because of those different ages. Like the younger kids are usually a little more excited, but they want to do younger activities. And the older kids, they either say, oh, I don't know what to do, or they just complain about anything you do offer. So it's just been this back and forth, like, okay, how do we do this? And so this is why I decided to speak to this episode today. But I've been thinking about implementing this one thing where I really like to give my kids buy-in, but sometimes I don't think it's always going to work. And actually, I'm going to leave that cliffhanger here. I will come back to that. But I did just want to mention that it is always this regular struggle for any parent, my clients included. How do you connect as a family when sometimes it feels that it's not even worth the effort because of all the complaints? In that conversation with my kids, I had those same thoughts, and I was just thinking, this is so hard. Even if my husband and I approach it with enthusiasm, even if we try to do all the things right, sometimes it still just doesn't work. So I'm going to give you some tips that have worked for my clients and that have helped us improve little by little each time. Are we completely there yet? Absolutely not. This episode is for me, just like it's for you. And I plan on choosing my 1% from this episode to implement. And I'll share that with you in just a moment. As always, just a quick, brief shout out to remind you about one-on-one coaching and other services that we have. We're going to have some courses coming up. We're going to have some accountability groups coming up, a lot of wonderful things. And I have some interns that are going to be helping me develop a lot of these things over the next few months at a very accelerated rate. So you are not going to want to miss this stuff. So check out fulfillmenttherapy.org to find out all the things that are happening, as well as our Facebook group or our Facebook page and Instagram. Check it out on fulfillmenttherapy.org. And in the show notes, you can find our link to all our social media and other places where you can find out the things that are happening right now. Let's jump back into the training for today. How do we create that summer bonding? Well, first of all, let's talk about why those traditions are important. I know you know this, but sometimes we have to remember because we think, is this worth it? Well, what traditions do is they foster connection and they create lasting memories. One thing I feel like I've done really well is I have printed out photo books every year of our most memorable events for the year. And I have found that that creates this storytelling in our family of, oh, do you remember what we did over the summer? Or that was so fun. And it gets you to focus on the beauty that you've created as a family instead of the complaining and the whining and all those things. So I almost think about those photo books like, okay, what do we want to showcase in our family this year? What would be fun for us? And not just for the kids, but for parents as well. So I think about all those things, but it's more about that conversation that we have that leads up to it, which I'll mention in just a minute. But another reason this is important is because you can focus on fun. And this is key here, simplicity. So that is enjoyable for everyone. I don't know if any of you are like me, but when my kids were younger, we did these big old summer bucket lists, and I think I really did put like 100 things on there, and we tried to hit everything in the community and all of the celebrations for 4th of July and all of these things, and it was just exhausting. I don't think anyone enjoyed it as much as I thought they would. So I've learned to really scale back and make it simple. So that's your number one tip, is just to simplify. Okay, I do want to go into some simple tips for you to consider as you are planning things moving forward with your family. So I'm going to throw these out there and just think about maybe 1 or 2, maybe even 3 that you can discuss with your family or you can implement as you plan out your summer. Tip number 1. I've already kind of mentioned this, but involve the whole family in brainstorming and planning these summer activities. It's so important that we value each member's input because that really brings a sense of ownership and excitement to each family member. Now, is this always roses and sunshine? Of course not. It's just one step in that right direction. So tip number 2, brainstorm a summer bucket list. So sit down together and brainstorm these ideas that you'd like to do during the summer. Every age group is going to be a little bit different, but just to remind each other, family relationships are a give and take. So sometimes, yes, we might go to the parks and the older kids won't like it, but put those time parameters on it. Like, yeah, and we're going to give you this many hours to do what you will with your time. But this is really important for our family values and connecting to each other. So maybe you don't love the park, but you can bring a book, or you can just walk with me around the park. Or we can just do a quick game together and then let them play for a little bit. So ideally, you're not just going to go and let the kids be reading or on their phones or something like that, but you'll actually be engaging with those parameters so that they can know, okay, after this, my parents gave me some autonomy and some control here by letting me know what I could do. So this is something that we do together, and then there's my separate time to do what I will with it. So there's sometimes both. And you do want them in that time to have somewhat of a say too. So maybe they don't want to go to the park all the time, but the next time you can do something else, like whatever it might be, going and getting ice cream one time together, or maybe it's even some sort of service like volunteering at an animal shelter or things like that. And sometimes there's parameters on those, like age limits, so it just depends. Or maybe they want to go to $2 Tuesdays at the theater or whatever that might be. It could be as simple as just playing card games or playing frisbee. There's lots of things like that we like to do that are just simple. Or riding bikes around the neighborhood together. Something like that, especially when you can get that movement, that connection, whatever that might be. And really, truly, somebody is generally going to complain, but it's how we respond to it and how we keep those things up, regardless of that, because that's kind of a given. In addition to that second tip, that brainstorming that summer bucket list, really try to create a mixture of outdoor adventures and creative projects and relaxing things as well, so that you are catering to those different interests and age groups. So I like to generate somewhat of a list and put it in front of them and then have them highlight them or circle them so that we're all kind of in on that. That might be summer reading programs, that might be camping, that might be STEAM projects or those like science projects that are pretty simple. That could be, like I mentioned, those card games or making cookies and taking it to the neighbor or learning how to make bread or these new things my daughter's been loving is these little felts. I don't even know what they're called. They have like these little cute faces and she makes these little felt food things. I wish I had a better name for it, but they're adorable. So maybe that time she could head that and teach our family members how to do it. Tip number 3, keep it simple and manageable. When things are too big, we get overwhelmed and burnt out, and then nobody really wants to do those things. But if you put parameters on it, like I mentioned, okay, we're going to do this for 90 minutes these days, or we are going to do this for just 1 hour after chores are done and before your free time each day, whatever that might be. Or maybe it's just like once a week or twice a week, whatever works best for your family. My exchange students have told me at different times that where they live, their parents don't really interact with the kids as much. They're not doing as many activities together. They just do things with their friends. And that just made me so sad. Like it's up to us to change that culture, to go against that culture if that's your culture in the area, to not hang out together as a family. Because otherwise, how can we stay connected even after that? Like one of my exchange students even commented on how we even interact with boyfriends and we even text them and we invite them over for dinner and we do all these things where we really try to connect. Now, again, does that mean there's no fighting? Does that mean that there's not these other things going on at times? No, of course not. And yet we really try to do what we can together. Remember, you don't have to do it all. So you have this general bucket list idea. And I often even go through the calendar and get the ones we really want in our planner ahead of time. And I often also put up a 3-month calendar in our kitchen where they can kind of see the whole summer and know what the big things are, like their camps, their church camps, their outings with friends that they're looking forward to, or family summer vacation, whatever those bigger things are. And then we fill in the gaps with those other things. And it's also okay to not have the entire family for all of them. Sometimes it's totally fine to just do things like picnics with the younger kids at the park and let the other ones do something else. But we also keep going with those kid dates so that we are regularly interacting with them and keeping up that relationship. All right, tip number 4, cater to all the age groups. So there are some simple activities that everyone can enjoy, like I mentioned, biking or a game. Now, one of my sons does not love games, but he is okay with throwing a frisbee around or playing spike ball or something like that. But reminding them also there is that give and take. Like, okay, I know you really don't want to play this game, but remember tomorrow we're playing spike ball. Or, you know what I mean? Like maybe you can't always cater to the whole group, but you can get most of them in many of those activities. But this is also where we can teach our kids to be flexible and adaptable and to accommodate each other because there is that give and take for one another. Tip number 5, minimize complaining with fun activities. Now, they're not always going to be fun, but you can put that little extra effort into it. that they can see and recognize that that will eliminate some of that complaining or that boredom. But I do want to remind you again that complaining is just one of the things that comes with parenting. Please remember that our children are still learning emotional regulation, and they learn that from us. So how are we modeling that? Are we just getting mad and just jumping into an argument with them? I'm raising my hand right now. Sometimes I do that, and that usually happens when I'm not taking care of myself, when I'm not setting boundaries, and when I'm not doing self-care. So if that is happening in your family, maybe examine that. I mentioned earlier that we sit down each week and we talk about the weekly plans as well as the vacations and things that are coming. So maybe you can do that like we do it during dinner time or even on Sundays in between meals. I'll just sit down with each individual child depending on how demanding their schedule is, and we'll just kind of go through it. And then we'll fill in those gaps with our family activities. Like, okay, what is it that we want to do this week the most? And I often have my bucket list in my planner, and I'll remind them of the things that we've done or we haven't done. Like, what are we missing out that you really are still wanting to do? It's important to think outside the box. So go online for some of those activities. I ask a lot of moms in the area some of the things that they love to do the most around us. And I've really built up this good list of things that I really enjoy around here, like those free outdoor hot springs or those fun celebrations. Like our community, they have these races where they create cardboard boats and they ride them down this little river creek thing. I don't know what technically is called. And there's this big race and it's just this fun event. And I think we might start doing that more. Just those little things that are a lot of fun to do. Get creative and think outside that box. But also remember, it's not your job to make everyone happy, but you can set the tone for that outing. So be patient. Here's another story for you. Just last night, I reminded my daughter, one of my daughters, that our mood is often contagious and it affects others in the home. So if we need to take a minute to step away, if we're really struggling and not acting like our best self, then we can do so without that shame, and then we can come back and apologize. So as this conversation, when we had both cooled off, when I went and had that conversation, I recognized, oh, even though it's been some time, she still has not cooled off. This needs to take place tomorrow. And I definitely made sure that I owned my part, but I set that boundary like, this behavior is not okay because it does affect the whole family. And I kind of let her know that ripple effect that had happened. These things happened, how you were treating people and how you were talking. And then this is how I responded after this. And then this is how your brother responded. And this is how your dad responded. And I said, now, are you responsible for how we all responded? No. And does it affect the family peace? Yes, it does. Harmony is very much a family affair, and we all play a part in that. So just reminding your family of that both positive and negative attitudes affect the family demographic. It's okay to be human, but it's also important to step back sometimes until we can calm down and be kind and own our part. So the summary of all of this is just, it's important to create these summer traditions that are enjoyable, that are inclusive, and that are memorable. Like, what are they going to look back on and really love? It's often not going to be that big, giant Disney World event. It's going to be looking at the stars. It's going to be that one-on-one date with your child. It's going to be learning how to make bread together or something like that. It's more about the mood and the kindness and the attentiveness than anything. Also, it's not all about fun. It's also about character development. Maybe this is where we are going to nursing homes to volunteer. Maybe it is helping the neighbor with their yard work. Maybe it's getting the neighbors together for some activity to create more unity and cohesion in your neighborhood. Whatever it might be, prioritize this quality time together to create those memories that will last a lifetime. And make sure to take pictures because this solidifies those memories, I promise you. So some of those key takeaways that I just want to leave you with is that family traditions are glue that hold us together. and these bonds will last forever. Also, simplicity is the key to successful summer traditions, so focus on what really matters, and the rest will fall into place. Remember to involve everyone in that planning process so that everyone feels valued and more invested, and remind them that sometimes the adults get to choose, and maybe you're not going to explain all of the details, and that's okay, because you're also going to make sure that they have some power and control over their own schedule and their personal time. But sometimes adults get to choose, and you don't need to have all the answers, but just know there's these parameters, this time set aside to connect and to come together. And even if there's a lot of complaining parents, even if that happens, hang on, because I would say probably 95% of the time, once we actually get them out there, the complaints fall away and they enjoy themselves. And every time we think, wow, that actually was really worth it, and we almost gave up. And I'm so glad that we didn't. I know these tips are going to help you. I know that as you hang on and as you make family traditions a priority, you will develop deeper, more meaningful relationships in your family that will help you weather any of those bumps in the road with your relationship. We are putting in as many deposits as we can to create stronger and more resilient bonds. This is our priority, and this is what brings true and lasting happiness. Best of luck, my friends. Enjoy your beautiful upcoming summer. I know I fully intend on doing so myself. And just a 3-second side note, please go and leave me a review, because that is what gets us seen, and that's what helps us reach other people to spread positive ripples and counteract all those negative things out there. Those reviews do matter. And if you don't really want to do that, then send these episodes to a friend. Talk about these things, share these things, so that we can build up our families and our community and our culture. Take care, my friends. I'll see you back here in just a few days. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.